Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Jim Lee's WildC.A.T.s number 10, cover dated April 1994. So this was something that I'd been looking forward to as soon as I learned about it, and that is Chris Claremont teaming up once again with Jim Lee to take over the writing of 3 or 4 issues of WildC.A.T.s. Very excited about that, and also his introduction of his own character, that's Claremont's own character, the Huntsman, who features here on the cover. And sad to say, after all of the expectation, the work itself is a little bit of a letdown, but I'll get to that as I open up the issue and focus in on the story and art. But this is a very good cover, and one in which the pencils and inks by Jim Lee and Williams is very well complemented by the computer coloring. And also what I really like on this cover is the directional device in terms of the way that the background wreckage, it's wreckage of the spaceship, is hatched here. So all focusing in on Huntsman. And a very good image of Zealot as well. And just, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there is one other focus point on this cover, and that is Zealot's very toned derriere. And I just can't believe that Jim Lee didn't know that what he didn't do deliberately what he's done there with this, because it takes a little bit away actually from Huntsman, who's in deep shadow on the cover. You know, the eye goes elsewhere on this cover, and I just wonder what he was up to with that, because it can't have been accidental. In any case, let's open this one up to the splash page here. So the splash page features Zealot rather than the Huntsman. Again, I think that's rather interesting. And here, if we look at the credits page, we'll see the team responsible for the issue. So Gateway is the name of the story, part 1. And the story is credited to Chris Claremont, pencils by Jim Lee, inks by Scott Williams. And look at this. Jim Lee's gotten Tom Orzechowski to come on board. So that is putting together almost completely the team that produced the best-selling comic of all time, X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men number 1, just with the exception of one member, and that's Joe Chiodo rather than Joe Rosas on colors. And that's a pity. It would have been nice to have everyone from X-Men number 1 working on this particular story. There's also a B story as well. So this is a very nice anchor image of a Zealot, and great combination of both the figure work, the inking, and the computer coloring. But I do have something that I want to note about the computer coloring on this issue, and in particular after this page. So in terms of the story, what's going on here is Zealot is training someone. So when we turn over the page, we'll see who it is. Well, it turns out to be Voodoo. And that's interesting, of course, because Claremont, in his run on Uncanny X-Men, had a mentoring relationship that he developed between Storm and Kitty Pryde. And there's shades of that, but with a much harder edge in the way that he's writing Zealot and Voodoo in the opening pages of this issue. So Voodoo isn't really interested in being trained, wonders whether it's all necessary. She says Spartan's been teaching her how to fight. He says, I've got some great moves. But Zealot is adamant that the cyborg is skilled but ultimately limited. He's a machine and you're one of the chosen. His province is the purely physical. Yours encompasses much more. Your heritage and powers impose an obligation, child. That's very Claremontian in terms of the theme of duty and obligation, which runs all through Uncanny X-Men. And then even the phrasing, the address of Voodoo as child, that's a Claremontian special. So she acquiesces and says, fine, but no way does that mean you get to turn me into one of your secret society of babe assassins. And Zealot turns on her a coda of that fate, Voodoo, you need have no fear, as she pulls the blade right up to her throat. So Voodoo responds aghast, accuses Zealot of being nuts perhaps, and Zealot tells her to shut up, be silent. This is not a child's game, Voodoo, and death is the least you have to fear. The Lord Imp and Spartan may be tolerant of your shortcomings. I'm not. If you are to stand by my side in battle, then I will make certain you are worthy of that honor. Do we understand each other? So training's important, and that was an arch theme of Claremont's X-Men as well. You know, for a team to work well, all the members of the team had to play their part and be trained and honed in the use of their powers and martial skills. So we see that here being brought to the WildC.A.T.s party, so to speak, and then we get an interruption, a complication in the plot, and it's this spaceship arriving, as it turns out, via, well, it looks like a boom tube, yes, and the sky explodes. So this is nice art on this page, and nice storytelling with that ship emerging from the wormhole, whatever it is. Gunfire aboard the ship as well. We see a figure in silhouette there being blasted off the stern as Voodoo makes the point. I like these small little figures here of Zealot and Voodoo, that they're nicely done. And this figure then falls to the ground. That's a nice image too. Nice implication of action as the body falls prone onto the ground. So this figure then begs for help. In Mercy's name, help us. It's very Claremontian in Mercy's name as well. This is a nice rendering of the two women as well by Lee and Williams. And now we have this antagonist responsible for that gunfire and shooting this guy in the back. And the guy has a name, Alabaster Wu. We learned that from this monstrous figure. And as he leaps down from the stern of the ship, he shouts, "Hide on one world or flee across 1,000. You cannot escape your destiny. Death." Okay, so Zealot goes into action here. This is a nice page. Claremont holding back on the dialogue and just letting the art do the talking. That's really nice. And I like also the choice here by Joe Chiodo to render the speed lines here in this purple color, and the cutting in there as well of Zealot's motion by Joe Chiodo is a nice touch as well. Also look at that detail of her blocking the blast with the shuriken that's laced to the side of her forearm as well. That's a nice little detail. So yeah, this is great storytelling on this page. Also the end point of her leap as she's cut off this guy's hand as well. That's nicely done. And a nice use of white on the page, and we'll see that over the course of other pages of this issue. Okay, so far so good. Another good action sequence here with the dead body of the antagonist falling to the ground and his head bouncing on the ground and hitting Voodoo on the foot. And apparently whatever this alien, whatever species it is, it smells horrible. So Zealot says, "I see no cause here for humor, Voodoo, but that is how you hide, is it not? Well, girl, that luxury is gone. The time has come to choose, to be the mistress of your fate or a perpetual victim." That's an interesting piece of dialogue as well from Claremont about, you know, hiding behind glib words and choosing to either be mistress of her fate, taking charge of her life, or being a perpetual victim. You know, dialogue that has relevance to this day, to 2023, eh? So Zealot continues because the guy, the man Wu, is still alive, instructs Voodoo to care for him, and she climbs aboard the ship via the anchor there. Again, another nice little small drawing on the bottom of the page. That's a trope of Jim Lee's art as she climbs up the chain in silhouette. And then Voodoo has some words with Wu, who isn't dead, and he explains that the creature that was beheaded by Zealot is called a Raksha, and its life is not as ours, neither is its death. As he walks away, he says, "I haven't the strength to help. Too much is at stake to take the risk. Forgive me." So Voodoo's surprised at, you know, what he could mean. And this is an interesting image here, and reminds me of John Carpenter's The Thing, the way that Lee has illustrated whatever organic liquid is emerging from the head or the kind of the neck of this dead alien, how it shoots out and wraps around Voodoo and draws her to it, and then covers her face in this discharge, and something happens. There's a transformation that goes on. So again, nice storytelling on these pages from Lee. And something that I want to note is I think that Lee here is obviously breaking down Claremont's script in the way that he used to, and it makes for a change in the not the style of the art, but panel layouts and page layouts. So if you look at the Killer Instinct crossover, for instance, you get full page splashes, you get double page spreads, where it's clear that in that storyline the art is the real focus. Whereas here with Claremont on board and Jim Lee breaking down his script, we've got way more panels on the page than we've been used to so far, and the art now is in service of telling the story, and that does make for a change in the way that Jim Lee draws, and in also the number of splash pages. There's only that first page is the only splash page in the issue, and there's no double page spreads. So that's intriguing. Anyway, Zealot makes her way into the ship, and she finds there a girl who's alive. One of these Rakshas makes an appearance, but Zealot stabs it in the gut. There's another one there, and so there's a fight on. And just as it seems like Zealot is going to lose because the Rakshas are legion, another Claremontian phrase, this figure emerges and says, "Lady, offered you her services, little princess. Honor demands the favor be returned." And he leaps out over the side of whatever structure this is within the ship, ready to help Zealot with one of her own swords. So this is our introduction to the Huntsman in the story, and that is Claremont's character. And the story goes that he was invited to be one of the original co-founders of Image, and he had an idea for a character, this character, the Huntsman, and he approached Whilce Portacio to be the artist on the work, because obviously Claremont can't draw, and Portacio refused because he had his own ideas for his own series, which would of course become Wetworks. So Claremont then didn't take part as in the founding of Image, but he was involved in talks and discussions and some of the original vision of Image. But here finally, 2 years after the founding of Image, he's coming aboard with Huntsman, and he is teaming up with his old X-Men partner Jim Lee for the visual realization of his character. And what's interesting again is that, you know, Lee isn't giving the Huntsman a whole page splash for his introduction, which is kind of what you'd expect. Like, you'd expect a bigger, splashier introduction to the character. Instead, he gets an anchor image, yes, but nothing more than that. So that's intriguing to me. Now we've got the Huntsman in action here, teaming up with Zealot, and the two of them make short work of the Rakshas. "Bless my soul," says Huntsman in Claremontian dialogue style, "I think we're done." So now Zealot draws her sword on the Huntsman because, of course, she doesn't know who he is. And I like the fact that he says nothing and then says, "I quite understand your blade, lady." And I like the way that Lee renders or draws the Huntsman flipping the blade around and passing the hilt towards Zealot. And then he climbs up this stair, the rungs of this stairs, and says, or ladder rather, "If you don't mind some advice though, I wouldn't linger. The thing about Rakshas, there's always more of them." And this is a nicely drawn panel as well, where Lee has chosen to white out Zealot and the edifice of the interior of the ship. So she's in the background there, and then we have in the foreground Huntsman and the princess. And the princess's name is Tai. And he asks her how she is, and she says, "Alive, thanks to you. It's what I'm here for." With a little help from Sister Zealot. So he says So Ty is not the name of the character, but rather maybe a title, because he says to her, to Zealot, that the girl's name is Miranda, and he's Huntsman. So he doesn't give a personal name, just more of a title. She's your child, I protect her, he says. So he's a protector to the girl. Another interesting feature of the art here is the open white background here and here again. It works well. Let's see. So now they're outside the ship, and Huntsman is tending to Miranda and recognizes that there was a fight and Voodoo lost. So Zealot is tired of him being evasive in relation to her questions, so she demands that he answer the questions. I like the way Lee has rendered her in complete silhouette there. Or suffer the consequences, he asks. If this is the thanks I get for saving your life, perhaps next time I'll think twice. And she responds, no help was asked. I've done well enough on my own. Want to bet, as he trips her up. Again, open white background, so we get to focus in on the figures themselves. And he says, there's an old saying about pride and falls. So I wonder, is Claremont trying to develop some chemistry here between Huntsman and Zealot? Yeah, there's an implication of it in the back and forth, the banter between the two. But then they focus in on Voodoo and trying to find her. So when the police arrive on the scene, Zealot says, we can't be found here. So they walk away. Again, look at the use of white on the page. Now, it's nice and designy, but also I feel that maybe Lee is running out of time towards the end of the issue, and he is trying to get through some of these pages more quickly than others. So they're on the track of Voodoo, and Zealot refers to her bullet bike, the one that she won from Grifter playing pool in issue number, number 8. And she says we can use it to follow. Okay. So nice little bit of continuity there with the bullet bike. And then we have a complete switch of scene back to the police who are investigating the mystery of the ship and all the dead bodies inside. And what I like is that Claremont always, for bit part players, gives them names and a hint of personality as well. So one of the lieutenant here is Tommy, and there's an implication that he and Morales have like a prior professional relationship as colleagues, and we get a little sense of that coming out in the dialogue, and how she tells the lieutenant, with all due respect, Tommy, up yours, which suggests, like that they have a good working relationship. And that is typical of Claremont, as I was saying, that he gives some attention to background characters and gives them a little bit of personality. So maybe Lee was rushing on a couple of the previous pages in order to spend some time on an image like this, where we have Wu making a phone call beside a elevated train rail, and so there's a bit of work in this particular panel, and it looks good and is nicely done. And so he contacts, it turns out, Marlowe. So this guy Wu has a prior relationship with Marlowe, and a phone number from Marlowe that Marlowe swore to him was good anytime, day or night, because he just got a secretary who said that Marlowe was out and that he should call back during business hours. So now Wu concludes, I've no choice, I'll have to trust he'll be there. But if you can't keep this promise, dear friend, what about the rest? So what's this prior relationship between Wu and Marlowe? Well, what became of Voodoo is the next thing that's covered by the story. So here she is, and she looks a little bit like like she's off kilter in the way that she's walking. Then we get a zero in on her, and it looks like her body's being eaten by something. And she comes across, or rather these three random people come across her. And again, Claremont giving them a little bit of personality, giving them names. Marty, call 911, we need an ambulance. And what will happen next? Let's turn the page. So they try to assist Voodoo, and then she kisses this guy, calling him meat. So she has been possessed by the alien monster, and takes, it seems, all the life force out of this guy, just leaving him a skull that explodes. So Marty here rushes to attack her and tells his other friend Connie to call the cops. But Voodoo, or whatever composite being she is now possessed, punches him. The suggestion is that his neck is broken with that punch. And then she goes after, and look at that John Carpenter, the Thing effect, goes after Connie and submits her to the same process as occurred with Voodoo earlier. Kisses her again, and because it's Claremont, and then she is restored to full vigor and says, "Better, much better. Though more will be needed to sustain my current form at peak efficiency, and I know the perfect candidate." And there's Wu up on top of the railing for the elevated train. And so she leaps after him. And again, note the use of white space here. So we get the image popping, but also perhaps Lee maybe pressed for time a little bit, because you've got to draw this page with the train oncoming, Wu getting aboard, and then this is a great little panel here of the Voodoo, possessed Voodoo, looking in through the window of the train and leaping through it then. I really like this. This is kind of horrifying look at Voodoo in silhouette there. So he boots her away back out the window again and continues on the train. So then we pick up with Voodoo, who makes a phone call and reverts to her normal voice and calls into Halo headquarters. And so she's picked up by the WildC.A.T.s, and she says what's important is that their leader, Alabaster Wu, has come to settle a blood debt with Jacob Marlowe. So she's giving a very partial, biased story to the WildC.A.T.s, which is going to set them on the trail of Alabaster Wu as an enemy. So as Mole says here, so we find this Wu, we kick his butt, no problem. And then Warblade is skeptical. Zealot captured? Sorry, I don't buy it. And she responds aggressively. What do you want to hear, Warblade? That it's my fault? Fine, okay, I confess I screwed up big time. She counted on me and I let her down, but at least I have the chance to make amends by saving Jacob. But he's gone walkabout again, remember, at the end of the previous issue, number 9, he's quit the WildC.A.T.s to go find himself. And here we are at the Docklands, the construction site of another Halo redevelopment, and it's there that he meets Jacob Marlowe. And so Wu says to him, I'm calling in our marker, Jacob, to be paid in full, but whatever that is interrupted by the arrival of the WildC.A.T.s, teleported to the construction site by Void. And Wu says, it's Voodoo says, thank goodness we found you, sir. You're in deadly danger. And Wu says, is this how you honor your word? We were to meet alone. It's none of my doing, Wu, believe me. So there's misconstruals and deception at work here. This is an interesting panel where all the characters are whited out and coloured in by Joe Chiodo, and the background is completely in black. It's nicely done. It's an interesting effect and it works well. A variation on Lee's usual device of rendering figures in black. So the reverse of that, the inverse of that. Interesting, it works. And the Spartan says, you're being set up, sir. This is a trap. But the whole thing is going to get complicated by the arrival of these guys again from the WildC.A.T.s, the original issues of the WildC.A.T. series. We've got what were they called again? The Troika. The only ones that are mentioned here are Attica, and I forget the name of the other two. And Claremont isn't giving us them, which is maybe a little error. But what's interesting here is there's a new person with them who introduces herself as Providence. I've danced the pathways of your future, Lord M. That sounds a lot like Spiral. And seal them all. Save the one that leads to this place and to us and to your doom. Resist us at our peril. So she's obviously a personification of one of the orbs of power, rather like Void. And it'll be interesting to see what Claremont has in mind for this character. So Marlowe responds, I bow to no false providence. And Voodoo, of course, possessed, says, perfect meat, your fate is sealed. So Marlowe's got these guys going up against him, as well as a traitor in the ranks with Voodoo. To be continued. So an interesting story, but just not as epic as what I had been expecting back in 1994 for a team up again between Claremont and Jim Lee. I was expecting something that would, recapture the magic of Claremont and Lee's work on Uncanny X-Men, and most particularly the first 3 issues of Volume 2 of X-Men. And this isn't that. It isn't. But there's some nice little touches here and there that I've pointed out. But it just isn't on the same level as their collaboration on X-Men. And that is a shame. But let me know what you thought of this reteaming of Claremont and Lee in the comments to this video. Now there is a backup story here, but I'm going to go through this one very quickly because it's just not at the same level as the Travis Charest backups from the previous 2 issues. So this backup story is by H.K. Proger, Ryan Benjamin and Tom McWeeny on inks, Benjamin on pencils, and it's titled Soldier's Story. So this is one of these characters, just getting a bit more background on him. So here he is in Korea in 1950. He's part of a platoon that is tasked with holding a pass against the oncoming Korean People's Army. The lieutenant is in despair and is of the opinion that they're all dead men, that they're all going to be shot to bits or taken prisoner, and that they don't want to be taken prisoner because the Chinese have entered the war. And the lieutenant refers to stories about what the Reds do to prisoners. So Soldier here, we don't get his name, punches out his lieutenant and takes on the oncoming army by himself. So here we go, we've got an anchor image here of him. So Ryan Benjamin doing good work for obviously a novice artist, very much imitative of Jim Lee's style. And I guess we could talk about the Wildstorm house style as it was. And he's doing what he can do as a novice artist. This is not too bad of an anchor image as well. So lots of violence in these panels. But ultimately, Soldier's injured badly himself. He grabs a grenade and he's determined to blow up the pass to block it and kill himself in the process. And then there is someone who appears to him, and it's, we know it's Zealot, and she says, you shall live to fight another day. And then he's in medical bay, and he's going to be on charges for slugging the lieutenant. So he's a prisoner as well, and he's telling his story to this female soldier. And who does it turn out to be when she lifts her cap, except for Zealot, and she says she's come to free him. And he concludes, I think I could really get to like you. So this is just a nothing story, a little tryout, a few pages for Ryan Benjamin to work on and do a bit of art. H.K. Proger, never heard of him before this, and I can't remember him doing anything afterwards. So I don't know. Is that a real person or what? Not sure. And here, the letters page, bit of reader art. That looks kind of funky, of Grifter. And an advertisement for Wetworks, a long time coming, but worth the wait. And looks decent, but the computer coloring is overpowers the black line of Will Spatacchio and Williams's art on this. So somebody's overdoing the computer coloring on this one. But anyway, never mind. And an advertisement for Chris Claremont's novels on the back. Interesting that. Did any of you ever read any of these? I didn't. I wonder, are they any good? And there you go. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Jim Lee's WildC.A.T.s number 10. Reteaming Lee with Chris Claremont, the team that created the best-selling comic of all time, X-Men number 1, and just not recapturing that magic exactly in this particular issue. I hope that you enjoyed the review and commentary. If you did, please like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.